Ready, we'll get right to questions. We'll start with Jason Kersey and then go to Ryan Aber. Jason?
Yeah. Hey, Alex. Wanted to ask you about Woody Washington. He played a really good game. You guys have moved him around a little bit. Can you talk about his journey and what you see for him in the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from Woody is you kind of came in as a corner and then as taken reps, practice reps at nickel and both safety spots. And so I mean at this point he's played really all five secondary. Just one of those guys in fall camp. I know we've talked about it before, and in terms of cross training guys, as we went through those months prior to the season, he's one of those guys who's take a look at out there at corner, and a guy that commits to technique and plays hard. The moment doesn't surprise him, which really for a corner means that the ball doesn't surprise him. And you saw that the other day. And so, I mean, I think he's one of those guys that, he's only going to get better. You're still talking about a redshirt freshman with limited in-game reps. But he was also thrown to the fire. I go back to the semifinal game. He kind of got thrown into the deal. And once again, the moment wasn't too big for him. And not that everything was perfect, obviously, for anybody that night. But for a guy that hadn't played a lot of football against some elite talent. So you kind of saw maybe a glimmer or a glimpse of it then. And just wait till he gets good. I mean, that would be my thing. But was impressed with him the other day, and he continues to work hard.
Thanks, Alex.
Hey, Ryan, I know I said you'd be next, but James Hale has to hop on his radio show here. So let me get to James, and then we'll go to you, Ryan. James?
Hey, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Ryan, for being patient. Alex, you guys did a lot of good things in the Texas game and played well for a lot of different points. You came out of that game. Now that you looked at it a little bit, how good do you feel about your defense at this point?
Well, I think obviously it's a work in progress, to put it mildly. I mean, the consistency, continues to escape us. I mean, not every game obviously is the same in terms of, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, quite frankly, in terms of, okay, what's the issue? What's the specific issue? Obviously there's a finish aspect of things, and immediately when I say, our inability to finish this past weekend bought 4 more overtimes. Now, in the same token, that same group then finished and played 4 overtimes and grinded one out. And there's a lot to that, and maybe more to that than anything else that you could ever hope for as a coach. However, we've talked about, what's the facts? The facts are, you look at and maybe we're doing too much looking at the scoreboard, but there's stretches of time, for long stretches of time, where we're almost guilty of being pretty good defense. Yeah. Like we almost screw around. We do it much longer. They're actually going to call us good. But we failed to get that done, right? And so it's one thing to talk about it, and believe me, we talk a lot about it. Give them those instances in practice, and obviously in games, and certainly you got to give the opponent credit. I mean, that there's another side to this whole coin, and you watch it across the country. These teams, offenses are not going to wave the white flag. That's not going to happen. And especially quality opponents like we faced. And so, no, we have to finish it, and obviously play more consistently. There's a lot of good, but it's not good enough.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, Ryan, you're up, and then we'll go to Eric Bailey.
Yeah, Alex, I wanted to ask you about Nick Binito, and specifically his growth, becoming a more multidimensional defender this year, and also finishing last week. Lincoln talked yesterday about Nick has had a lot of chances, but hadn't finished a ton of those until last Saturday.
Well, one of the things, and he would fall in this category, being close, and you got to look at it from, how's your get off? Are you a step late because your get off wasn't very good? What was, whether it's a block destruction in terms of your pass rush move on an offensive tackle, or it's stun into a gap. Are you taking up too much of the man as opposed to running into space? What's your finishing skills on the quarterback? Are you a step late because you don't believe you're going to get there, and it catches you by surprise? So all those things factor in. But it was good to see him finish plays. One of the ways we use him is kind of, and I wouldn't even, it's not a spy, although we do that at times, and certainly this last weekend, but we call it a mug technique, where it kind of the second wave. You get the first wave of rushers, and then the second wave, when a quarterback steps in some of those things, and he has a knack for kind of being that that approach, which you only do a certain amount of times over the course of a game, but that speaks to the using them in multiple ways. And then outside linebacker, one of the skill sets, you got to be able to drop in coverage at times, and so using all those things. But I was glad to see production kind of come his way this past weekend. He's a guy that, in that position, is something we talked about a year ago, that needs more production. You call it the rush end for a reason, and that it is something that we'll continue to look towards. But been pleased with Nick, and again, I think while I say that, there's more from him that we need.
Just a quick follow. You talked about that spy, and I can't remember what the word you used for it was, but
mug.
Yeah, is that what you were doing on that sack in the third overtime, or was that a spy situation?
That was a mug. It was a mug, and it's just a little bit more aggressive. I mean, not to get into all the schematics of it, but I mean, that's not, you can see it on film, so I'm not giving away secrets. But
yeah,
it's just kind of that if you get too, spy has a tendency to be a little bit too passive, and so what we're trying to do, like I said, is kind of more of a second wave in terms of in the name of aggression, right? So yes, it was.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Eric, you're up, and then Joe Bettner.
Hey, Alex, how well do Nick and John Michael Terry complement each other at their position, and how effective does it make the defense when you can rotate at that spot? And also, I just wanted to ask you about John Michael. Is he near or surpassed where he was right now, compared to where he was when he suffered his injury last year?
Yeah, John Michael's an absolute warrior now. I mean, you talk about a guy that practices every day, and all he does is go hard. Physical guy, holds up at the point of attack, all those things. But no, I think that they are a good complement to each other. I mean, at all spots, obviously, the more you rotate, and we were able to, we made a commitment to rotate a little bit more at a number of spots this past week, and it's something that we got to continue to do as long as there's not much drop off. And I guess that position, specific to those guys, is there's not a big drop off between the two of them, and so that's a nice rotation. And I think Brendan Walker's another guy. He's a young guy that we continue to look to get more reps as he becomes more confident. There's one thing to know the defense and say, okay, in the meeting room setting, I can say, okay, this is what I got to do. It's another thing to confidently know, what you're doing, so you can execute those things. But so he's a guy we'd like to add to that mix too. And then having an opportunity when you're asking guys to drop in coverage, rush the passer, and those things, trying to keep guys fresh is a huge element of things. So it's good to have both those guys.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, let's go to Joe, and then Mason Young.
Alex, with some of the young guys, like you're talking about Woody a little bit earlier, but just with the young DBs, are they closer to where you would want them to be as far as maybe some of the time they missed as far as physical reps during the off season?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. The difficult part is when you miss some of the offseason, and then you obviously you miss the offseason. To use that term this year is a little bit, you got to stop yourself. But fall camp kind of that stretch of time. That's the time, especially when you don't have, June with these guys. It's a crash course for them. They get a couple of weeks in the weight room to be introduction to college football, and then all of a sudden you're into fall camp and that, and then you miss some time along the way, and then you come back and all of a sudden you're in game week. Well, that moment, it's no longer about how do we get the freshmen, get the young guys reps. It's how do we prepare for games and trying to strike that balance. And I don't know if we did a great job of it as I look at how we did things. Maybe in some respects we gave them too many reps. What we needed to do if they weren't going to perform on that particular Saturday was maybe not give them too much. Now, the flip side is then they're never going to be ready. And so anyway, that's the unique challenges that we find ourselves in 2020. Are they progressing? Without question, trying to find ways to get guys engaged, but they have to perform in those moments, and they got to have, give us reasons to believe that they will in practice. But we tell the guys, real frankly, if you perform in practice, we're willing to put you in a game. And so that's just something that they can continue to work towards. But guys, we're excited about, the future's bright. But we got to make sure that in 2020 that they got to perform to a certain level to find reps.
Thank you.
Okay, Mason Young, and then Bob Prisbillo.
Coach, with Desean White being one of the older guys in that linebacker room, just how important is his leadership in that group, and what kind of improvements are you hoping to see from him moving forward with this season?
Yeah, just continued consistency. We've talked about every position just from a production standpoint, but no, he is a leader, and I think for all these guys, especially where we find ourselves through 4 games, is I just keep thinking about the consistent aspect. We got to make sure that for us to you don't finish games by magically all of a sudden the play goes your way. It's from consistently executing your responsibilities over the course of 60 minutes. And so he's one of those guys like so many that has to continue to do that. And so he has the game reps and so has the credibility, and he just got to continue to work to be consistent for us over the course of 60 minutes.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay, Bob, you're up, and then John Hoover.
Alex, transition junior college, the Big 12 is tough enough even with the spring, but without it, made it incredibly tough. Are Josh Ellison, Perrion starting to play the way that you need them to?
Oh, I think so. And I certainly think we haven't seen their best yet. But no, I thought specific to obviously Perrion this last weekend, you saw a guy that can affect a football game. And we expect him to, and so that's something that certainly we're excited about both of those guys. When you take junior college guys, there's pressure on you to make sure that you got to hit, because you get again, to your point, you only get so much time with them anyway, and then all of a sudden the way this thing worked out this year, you got even less prior to their first snaps for you. And if you didn't need junior college guys, you wouldn't have taken junior college guys. So, they have to have an immediate impact. And so I've been pleased. Coach Tibbs has done a great job. We've been able to rotate in the interior defensive line, probably even more so than a year ago. And so I've been quite pleased over the really the 4-game stretch, not just this past weekend, but the ability of those guys and again, just continue to improve, because you're not talking about just rotational guys get a few reps a game. You're talking about guys having a significant impact on your defense, in the middle of your defense. And so tall order, but no, they continue to improve, and been impressed with them.
Okay, we'll go to John and then Keegan.
Hey, Alex, you've talked a lot about consistency today, and I wonder if you can give us some illustrations maybe of some positions or some groups or some players individually that are doing this with their consistency versus what we've seen overall, kind of an up and down model. Are you seeing consistency, consistent growth and progress out of guys?
We are, but it's got to show up on Saturday. And what you do in the first quarter, the calls aren't different in the fourth quarter than they are, and I guess maybe they should be. I got to evaluate that, but I think it's across positions, and I think that's probably. I don't know that makes that any better. And in a lot of ways, when you're talking about inconsistencies across 11 different positions on the defense, then you're in that mode of, okay, well, this guy only had one issue, and then this guy only had one issue, but they add up. And that's where we found ourselves. I mean, to circle one spot and say, obviously anytime a defensive back has an issue, the world sees it. When a linebacker or defensive lineman misses a gap, it's on the DB to get him down. And the one you see is the DB that didn't get him on the ground necessarily, and it's all that plays into it. But no, it has not been specific to one particular call. Is it 3 down? Is it 4 down? Is it pressures versus, coverage, and say, well, no, that hasn't rung true, right? Is it one position group or one particular player, and that hasn't rung true. And again, I don't know that makes it better or worse, quite frankly. If it's one individual player, then I guess the easy answer is, okay, get that player out and let's move on. But certainly hasn't been that simple for us. But I think it's got, if you can't have a consistent Tuesday, it's going to be very difficult under the bright lights of the Saturday on national television to consistently execute over a 60-minute ball game, and so that's where it starts, and probably have had certainly better practices than I would say we've had a year ago. We're a better practice team, which is a good thing. But nobody wants to hear that because you got to go do it on Saturday. And so, no, that's just something we continue to emphasize. And it's something that, each individual position coach has to take ownership in, obviously myself as the coordinator, and then each individual guy, one of the things, and it sounds simple, but just do it one more time. Just do it one more time. And then one of the things we talk about is the same guy we coach on Tuesday is the same guy we want to coach on Wednesday. And when I say same guy, the same guy making the improvement. So the agreement is we're going to get better every single day, but we don't need this different version you come in on Saturday, on either side of the spectrum. We don't need the hope for the magic to show up on Saturday. No, we need the guy to give us consistent effort and execution on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of game week. And then we don't need the more intense version of you on Saturday. No, we're going to practice that intensity. We need the more consistent version. We got to make sure that we just simply do it one more time. Do it one more time. And it sounds so simple. I realize that, it's fact. I mean that's how this thing goes. Is what you do once, you got to do twice, and you got to do better.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, time for just two more. Keegan and then Kerry Murdoch.
Yeah, Alex, obviously your defensive line the last 2 years, specifically no you Texas, but it seems like throughout conference plays has been the biggest impact on the field. Just what has it been like being able to get these guys ready each and every week, especially with Calvin Thibodeau and the job Jamar Cain has done so far? It just seems like they just have had just a monster impact in each and every game since you've taken over.
Yeah, I'm secondary coach by trade, but the first stats I look at every single time after a game is I'm looking at TFLs and sacks. How do we impact? What was the negative play count? How do we affect an opponent? And the other thing that you analyze on Sundays when you start watching the video, you say, okay, where did they stand in terms of their ability to execute their offense? Because there's a play, and football happens. It's one of those things. You watch any game, and how whether NFL or college, and they're offensive plays, and they execute. Guy makes a catch and makes a run, and those things happen. And obviously trying to limit those. But one of the things that we look at is say, what was this particular offense able to execute at as they would draw it up. Okay, over the course of a Saturday game day, and so that's an evaluation, and obviously that's subjective, right? And so you're looking at for some of those specific numbers to kind of back up, as you analyze, and you want to be honest with yourself. But there's been several instances where you say, the inability to maybe run the football in normal down situations at a consistent clip. And you say, okay, well then that puts pressure obviously on the coordinator and puts pressure on an offense, through the air. And so, are we affecting them in the pass game? How long are we, asking our guys to cover in those things? If we bring pressure, we expect to gain pressure. Can we get pressure with 3? Can we get pressure with 4? And all those things that you analyze. But been very pleased with Coach Cain, Coach Thibodeau. Have done a real nice job with those guys. And I think it, have we continued to just only scratch the surface, I think, across the board in terms of what we think we can be.
Thanks, Alex.
Last one to Kerry.
Hey, Alex. You go all last year, you're installing a new defense. You come back this year. How much of a toll does that take on just developing leadership when you have guys that, spent all last year just learning a system? And, conversely, like, does putting Trey Norwood in at safety maybe help build some of that leadership as a guy that's, everybody kind of looks up to, that's a veteran of the defense?
Yeah, I think, when you take over and you look at, last year specifically, and then obviously into this year, you're saying that, and then here comes that word again, consistency. It's very difficult to be a leader if you're not performing at a consistent level, right? And so, that's been, one of our aims is and been very frank with the guys is don't attempt to be a leader if you can't lead yourself. You're gonna, stand up in front of a room and tell another individual that they need to perform at a higher level, and then you go out there and you don't perform at one yourself. You completely lose credibility. And then as a coaching staff, then you're playing damage control, because there's that feels like finger pointing. When an individual stands up and says, you need to do this, but I'm not doing it myself, then that's when you have, some cultural issues. And then quite frankly, we've had that. We've had that, specifically when we took over. It's not my fault, it's someone else's. And so taking ownership as a complete unit, and that's something that you continue to work through. You're never there, because new pieces come in and everything else and say, well, I didn't make the mistake, he made a mistake, type of, and that's not leadership, obviously. right? But a lot of times that's the default behavior that exists, especially when you don't have consistent performances. Everybody it always feels a whole lot better when you can blame somebody else. When things don't go exactly how you want it to go. And obviously when we took over, we've had a lot of instances and continue to where things haven't gone exactly how we certainly expected to. And so in those moments, what we had to do is we say it as a coaching staff, we have to be the leaders. We have to show them the way. And quite frankly, I got to do a better job of that because, frustrations obviously ensue when things don't, happen as fast as you want them to happen. And they're not. The word patience doesn't, kind of makes you, vomit in your mouth a little bit as a coach because, you don't have patience. Nobody wants to hear patience, but you've got to have some perspective. And so making sure that we do that as a coaching staff so that the players feel that way. And so that they feel like the dam's not breaking every time, a bad play happens in practice and those things. And so, but in the end, I know it's a long answer, but in the end, we need to give these guys, empower them to be leaders, but they got to do their part in terms of performing at a consistent level.